Want some candy?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
I hear you looking for candy, man, bitch. Give me some sugar, baby. Like scary movies.
Want some candy?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Monster Candy Podcast. You realize we haven't started with any music this time. That's because the one host that plays it isn't here. So you're dealing with another, sausage party episode? That's what we call?
Total sausage party, man, yeah!
Double sausage party episode of Monster Candy Podcast, which basically translates that Shotzi Blackheart is not here today. However, you have the two hosts that care so much that they would be here right now. Sorry, I can't even hold it. The singer.
The sausages of the party.
The sausages of the party are here. To my right, you have the singer of the Memphis Murder Men himself, Screamin E.
Hey, everybody, Screamin E from Memphis up.
And I am Dominic Davey, bassist for the band Tsunami Bomb in my other life, and host of 3 gigs. And today, we're here to talk about Dr. Sleep.
Sleepy sleep, doctors.
But before we do that, E, you pointed out to me right before we started recording that we haven't talked about our adventure.
Crossing the streams?
Crossing the streams. No, we don't want to talk about that. That's not for them. That's
right.
Not podcast story.
That's our side podcast.
That's our side podcast, Crossing the Streams. Yes. We said Crossing the Streams with Screamin E and Dominic. That would be stupid. What would we... I don't want to talk about what we talk about. I don't even want to theorize what's Crossing the Streams with Screamin E and Dominic would be. That's what this show is. It's essentially whenever Shotzi isn't here, it's Crossing the Street. No, let's not go there. No, about... Monsterpalooza.
Son of Monsterpalooza.
I didn't realize we didn't... See, you said we have not talked about that on the show.
We have not, in depth.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
I would have thought that we had. So, I'm shocked. Well, tee it off, man. Let's talk about it.
Son of Monsterpalooza. Burbank. Way better location still than...
the other one.
Yes.
It's smaller, but I do like it better.
I do like it better. It's so much easier just to get in there and get your shit. See, it still has good guests. It had real good guests, actually.
It did. I mean, you can do it all in one night, but it's the guests and the different things that happen each night of that particular convention that makes it worth staying. But yeah, we buzzed down there with Enzo Di Barracuda. From Arnoldcore, the greatest band of all time. If you haven't checked out Arnoldcore, highly recommend it. In fact, do yourself a favor and check out all of our bands. Arnoldcore, Tsunami Bomb, and the Memphis Murder Men. They're all awesome, and you can find them all. Exactly. You can find them all on Spotify. Arnoldcore is a really great band that their whole story is that they're Austrian commandos who have come together to sing about Austria's mythology and legends and stories that have been bastardized in Hollywood. So Enzo took a break from that to come with us.
He had never been to a Monsterpalooza.
Which is crazy because Enzo, a little background, we've talked about Enzo on the show before, but he's like one of the biggest horror fans that you can be. Like his collection of memorabilia and toys is incredible. I mean, he's
pretty good.
He's a lifer. He is a horror lifer. And we've tried to get him on this show because anything that comes out, that man is informed. Like, he knows what he's talking about. He's a horror library. I don't even think he listens to the show. He knows about it.
I mean, why wouldn't he? That's son of a bitch.
Son of a Enzo, if you're not listening to this, goddamn you. But anyway, he went with us, and that was actually a lot of fun because Shotzi was back east. as she is more and more often. By this time, they all know the news. Yeah, you guys all know it. She's now with WWE. So we'll probably have quite a few more Sausage Party episodes, actually.
the stream.
Yeah, it's going to be a few more of those, unfortunately. We're working on that, like, to see what we can do about that. But, yeah, man, it was super cool. I love Monsterpalooza. I made a list. Like, I didn't even have enough money to buy all the things I wanted, so I kept entering onto my Amazon wish list anything that I found, or I'd find it online and open it up so I could buy it later.
Smart idea.
Yeah, so I had like a whole list of things, and I haven't gotten everything, because sometimes you look later and you're like, do I really need that statue of Cthulhu? Do I?
Yes.
That's what I thought too. That's why I ordered it. It's coming in tomorrow.
Yeah, I feel like we all got some pretty good shit.
Yeah, I walked away with a bunch of stuff. I mean, for me, it's always the vendors. I like seeing all the artists and companies that are bringing up stuff and what they have. That's my favorite part of it. And
again,
the smaller one can be
Son
done
of
in a day.
Monsterpalooza is so much easier. If there's something you're looking for.
Yeah, you can get in and out of there in a day. I'm sure they don't want us to say that, but they don't sponsor the show, so fuck them. But it's really good. You can do it in a day, that one, the Son of Monsterpalooza, and you can really hit everything up in a night and a day, and it'll be fine. You should definitely check it out. I mean, we talk about Monsterpaloozas all the time.
Enzo, actually, the key, because I was like, dude, you need to go. Come on, let's go.
Oh, right.
He's like, I'm thinking about it. And then he was like, all the Phantasm's going to be there, like all those fucking people.
Yeah.
And those of you who don't know, he had a Phantasm-themed wedding.
Yeah. We've talked about him
Right.
before. Longtime listeners might remember him coming up before. He's like one of those personalities. Like, we have all these people around us that are very horror-minded people that should come on the show or something. Like Enzo, who had a Phantasm-themed wedding that really, really was a Phantasm-themed wedding. Or our friend Christina Malicious, professional makeup artist, who is a walking horror library. She loves it. She's great. Or my brother Johnny, who was the horror guy that said like the It movies were
Ooh,
like
Scary Clown.
Ooh, Scary Clown. They were the best movies of that type. There's all sorts of fun. Like, so I don't know. We got to get some of these people on here, so it's not always just Sausage Party episodes. But Enzo,
Well, it still would be.
yeah, it still would be. I guess we're talking about, well, except for Christina. But the key on Enzo's thing is that when he was with the Phantasm, he got like, what he got it. There's his
Sheet
wedding
music,
guest book.
Yeah, his guest book.
And he has sheet music. He bought sheet music of the song that they play. The terrible, terrible song they play.
Yes.
Because that guy's a musician. You know, Phantasm is a really crazy movie. We haven't done an episode on that.
We will.
We have to.
We will.
And we should have... I want Shotzi here for that. I want her in on that. And I'd like Enzo to argue it.
Yeah.
But that'd probably... Because, I mean...
That's like He's not going to like to hear what...
I mean, I could be pretty hard on that movie.
Yeah.
I can give it a pass if I talk about it that it's like a dream. It's kind of funny. It's both, to me, Phantasm, though that's not the subject of today's thing. Phantasm is one of those movies that both deserves the praise that it gets and does not deserve the praise that it gets. Almost as bad as Bride of Frankenstein in a lot of ways, but not quite. It's like there's some things that are like... Some things just don't make sense. It's like there just was a lot of cocaine behind that movie, and I just think they just like, all right, yeah, this is. I'm gonna edit it. I got it.
Bride of Frankenstein is like the Ted Nugent of horror movies. Where like in theory you're like, dude, the fucking wild man in Detroit or whatever, you know, Detroit madman, and he's fucking. You're like, oh man, you think of 70s Ted Nugent just being fucking crazy. Oh yeah. And then you actually go and listen to this stuff, and you're like,
yeah, I guess.
I don't know. That's not. But then you have this picture of the wildness and the crazy rock and roll style.
On paper, it's better than
Ted
the
Nugent
practicality,
was,
yeah.
but then you listen to the shit, and you're like,
Yeah, no, honestly, and we've talked. Yeah, anyone who's wondering what we're talking about, check out the Bride of Frankenstein episode where we spit in the face of everybody who loves that movie and remind them all that it is not that great. But she's a great character, but not a great movie. And she's only in her movie for like minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I gotta say, Phantasm is a movie I would love to do an episode on because I could argue what's great about it, and then I could totally trash that movie.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because there's a lot of great things about it, but there's a lot terrible about it.
To use those political terms that people like to throw around today, there's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack in that movie. But yeah, so he got everything signed. I don't know. I just say everyone should check out Monsterpalooza, or wherever you're at, see if there's a horror convention where you're going. Because I do conventions, comic conventions, and I do I do all sorts of stuff. And I have to say, my favorite conventions are horror conventions. Those are where I find the most creative artists, the most interesting people, just the coolest costumes. It's just really great. No diss on comic conventions or insurance conventions or whatever else you might convent for yourself. But
although insurance conventions are probably pretty crazy.
Pretty fucking crazy.
The after
parties are sick.
Cocaine and booze.
But
fuck.
Yeah, horror conventions are my favorite, and I think you guys should all go. Everyone should go to a horror convention and tell us. Let us know where the horror convention in your area is, because one of these days I'd like us to start tabling at conventions.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
I think we really need to get to that.
You know what else is great about Son of Monsterpalooza? The location. It's close to everything.
Yeah.
There's food. There's hotels. It's such a key location.
Yeah. We were close to that store. We stopped at the store. That was amazing. Halloween Town.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that place was rad.
Yeah.
And I say that without them being a sponsor or anything. Anyone associated with Halloween Town, you have an amazing store. That was the first time I'd ever gone in there, and I fell in love with it. I love that place. Dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
You could literally have a field day of the stuff you'd buy from that place.
Oh, yeah.
And walk out of there and just convince people you went to a horror convention.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So good.
I definitely am more of a fan of Son of Monsterpalooza.
Yeah. I like the smaller. I mean, Monsterpalooza is getting bigger and bigger, which is great, but it's crazy intense how big it is.
Yeah. They definitely need to upgrade their space to something bigger.
Yeah, and they take a long time to get everyone in the lines and everything. It's all true, but I would like to see. I like that they have a smaller one, but even that one I think is getting bigger. But it's still perfect.
Yeah, dude, will call. We get our fucking tickets. We waited in line for what? 20 minutes.
Yeah.
To get in. To the door.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So, as soon as the doors opened, it was.
I had to buy a ticket at the door, and I got in really fast.
That's right. Yeah,
I got in really quick.
Waited, yeah.
Yeah, you guys waited 20 minutes because you had your tickets pre-bought. I bought my ticket at the door, still got in within no time at all. It was perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. This is a beautiful convention. No, I definitely recommend it.
Beautiful convention.
All right. So I guess that counts as what would normally be horror news.
Yes.
But we didn't do. So, Dr. Sleep. Stephen King's sequel to The Shining turned into a movie form by Mike Flanagan. Is that his name? Mike Flanagan, I believe. Pretty sick. Interesting. I should make note that this movie flopped big time. I was a little surprised. Yeah, Mike Flanagan was the director, writer of Stephen King, based on his novel, and Mike Flanagan converted it. He starred Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson, and others. And it flopped.
That's what I heard.
I'm surprised.
I am too.
I guess they had a sequel in mind, which is crazy because where are you gonna go with this? But I guess that might be on hold then because it didn't do so well.
What was it up against though? Oh, Joker. It came out the week before.
No, Joker's been out for weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't up against anything. It just didn't take. I think when I look at it, I think the mistakes are pretty obvious. To me, they released it. It came out. What was the release date? It came out November 8th, I want to say. Yeah, November 8th. Just missing Halloween and
Yeah.
horror season. I don't know why they thought that was a good idea. People are now moving into Thanksgiving mode, and I think they're not in the mode for a scary movie,
Well,
even though
with
it's not that scary.
This film, I didn't see a lot of
Marketing?
marketing. For
No,
it.
marketing was real tame. I think they just expected people to have buzz for it. I think that was a mistake because I think it was a solid enough film, but we'll get into that. But yeah, November 8th came out. It's mildly horror, you know? I mean, because it's connected to the... I didn't find it incredibly scary, but I can't tell. My nerve endings are dead.
Yeah,
but
it was not creepy. I never read the book, so I have no reference.
I read the book years ago, right when it came out. Great book. This movie did something very challenging. So it's unfortunate that it didn't do well. I think it's probably going to be remembered better than it is now. I think that eventually people will consider this kind of a classic because it was good. It was solid because Stephen King notoriously hated The Shining movie, even though most people consider The Shining a classic, because it converted so many elements out of his book. One of his biggest complaints about it was that the direction for Jack Nicholson to play Jack Torrance, was all wrong because he said, in the book, Jack Torrance is a really good guy who's trying to keep it together, bit of a drunk, getting worse, having a hard time, but trying to be a good dad, and then kind of falls apart and then goes off, so that when he finally flips, it's supposed to be scary to watch this good man fall apart. But in the movie, Jack Nicholson plays him as kind of a prick, working at 11 the whole time.
Yeah.
And that was one of his biggest problems with the movie, is that there was no suspense. All the suspense was conveyed in the camera work, but not in the characters.
But
Yeah, I know. But it was...
Kubrick's defense, that portion of the Jack Torrance story
Yeah.
could, on its own, probably be a novel, as the way Stephen King writes.
Yeah. Stephen
So-
King is gratuitous with the
What are you
descriptions.
gonna, so I get it, but I do like the angle, the original angle, better.
Right. Right. So, Mike Flanagan convinced Stephen King to let him do the movie by stating, and the movie the way he wanted to do it, to make it a definite sequel to both the book and the movie, and to course correct certain elements from the movie that were, in Stephen King's mind, not correct, and bring it in, but also connect it to the movie that audiences loved. Because most audiences who haven't read The Shining love The Shining. And even some people who've read The Shining, like myself, love The Shining. I like them both.
It's a good movie.
He did, it's a great all around. So this movie was supposed to be a sequel to piece them together. And I saw that Stephen King was very happy with it. And watching it, I can see why. It completely pays tribute, respectfully, to Stanley Kubrick's vision, as well as addressing all of Stephen King's elements. And it's probably the greatest thing about the movie, is that how smoothly it integrates all these elements. Spoiler alert, but most of you don't listen to these until you watch the movie anyway, or since it flopped, most of you won't watch the movie. The ending of this movie, in regards to the Overlook Hotel, see, I'll do it somewhat spoiler free. The ending of this movie resembles more the ending of the novel Shining, and how the Overlook Hotel finds itself at the end of this movie, which is another thing that Stephen King had a problem with, that the Overlook survived at the end. So I'm pretty stoked. I'm pretty impressed and stoked with how this I have to just super compliment before we go into anything negative, is how smoothly this dude, Mike Flanagan, seamlessly just merged these two threads and made it work as a sequel for both. And I have to say that was probably the most magnificent thing about it. But very few people gave a shit about that. I just spent like a good 4 minutes about something that nobody gives a shit about.
Yeah, I watched it, and I liked it. Wasn't as again? I'm coming from not reading the book, but I can only imagine that it was a little creepier.
The book?
The book.
Well, yeah, Stephen King's definitely a master at creating suspense. I mean, his basic format is he lays down a bunch of characters and tries to make them as realistic and as relatable as possible.
Right.
And, you know, in this particular case, Danny Torrance finds himself starting to fall into the pitfalls that affected his father. Between trying to muffle his own gifts and his own childhood trauma, he has become an alcoholic and has fallen apart and really starts falling on hard times, but then discovers AA, realizes he's hit bottom, tries to get help, and tries to recover. That's the backdrop against which this story unfolds, where he encounters a group of psychic vampires called the True Knot, who siphon out the steam or the spirits and essence of psychics or people with the shining, people who shine, like Danny. But they never found Danny, but they end up finding this girl who reaches out to Danny, and Danny has to take a stand, see what I did there, and try and protect her from the True Knot, these vampires.
Which
So,
I thought was a cool element
yeah,
to a story,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
The steampunk look was probably not really my favorite
The
thing.
hat?
Yeah, just they're all hippie vibe kind of deal. I was like,
That's funny.
But,
You didn't like that? He's referring to he did not like the villain of Rose the Hat style.
well, that and her that the boyfriend dude.
Crow Daddy.
Yeah, I mean they're all kind of like a traveling hippie commune,
I think they were supposed to be like hippie / gypsy kind of.
and they're old, I guess. You know.
Yeah, they're all old. They're all from different times in history.
right, but I just don't like that aesthetic. But
I mean, their names, just so you know, are like Rose the Hat, Crow Daddy, Snakebite Andy, Apron Andy, Barry the Chunk, Grandpa Flick, Silent Sari. Yeah, Diesel Doug, Short Eddie.
yeah,
Yeah, so you get an idea. They're like hobos, and Rose the Hat is the leader, and she wears a top hat, played by Rebecca Ferguson.
hot.
Who,
She's a pretty gorgeous.
she's gorgeous.
Woman.
I thought she did a really good job
Yeah.
of being this psychic vampire
Soul-sucking
villain. Yeah,
vampire. Yeah.
yeah. No, I mean, she didn't like. She was unnerving
Yeah.
at times. There was a couple unnerving points.
Yeah. I just feel like I wish it was a little darker.
I think that the movie hesitated. I mean, there was one part that made me really uncomfortable when they're killing their
With the
victim.
boy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was hard to watch for me.
That was, I mean, that was dark, but I'm just the whole overall feel. Like
Yeah,
how
you're
The
talking about the
Shining-
atmosphere.
The atmosphere was like very. It was heavy.
There was no menace for a lot of this.
Yeah. There is for me, like in the beginning with Danny,
Mm-hmm.
how he's going through everything, and like okay, he gets cleaned up, and then once he starts shining with his niece.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
That's actually, there's a couple elements from the book that were left out that are odd. And one of them is, in the book, it turns out that the girl calling for his help is actually his niece. That her mother was the product of an affair that his father had during one of his drinking binges before the Overlook Hotel. And so you find a reason why this girl is so powerful,
And why they're so
they're so connected, why these two strange people are brought together. And in the book, it's a very like aha moment. It's not a spoiler because that is not included in this movie at all. That is not even a part
I
of
just
it.
found that out minutes before we started this thing. I'm
Right,
like,
as we were discussing the differences.
why wouldn't that be in the movie? That seems like a pretty
I am surprised
integral
that was
part
left out.
to their whole vibe thing. Like I'm like, you might want to mention that.
I mean, I think that they tried to use the fact of how powerful the young girl was, but I think that they sacrificed a really cool reveal but I mean, they cut out all the parts connected to how he finds out, but I think they could have found out some other way. They were presenting a lot of things. But back to your point, I think you're right. I think the movie does suffer from a lack of menace and dread. Like, I didn't really find the True Knot very terrifying. And in the book, they are. And I was uncomfortable when they murdered a child.
The Shining, which the movie did a good job of, like the book, like anxiety.
Yeah, and I will
The
say
whole
this.
time you're like, you're anxious. Everything's anxious. You're like, oh, and it's unsettling and unnerving and uncomfortable.
You watch Jack Nicholson interview for the job, and you're uncomfortable.
Right.
Because you're like watching a dickhead like try and be nice, and he does a really good job of trying to look like a guy faking being cool, to hopes to get a job, but like at the same time, I thought that Ewan McGregor did a great job of portraying somebody like when he was at his drunk moment, I believed it when he started getting it together.
He was believable as.
Even
Danny
his own
Torrance.
struggles with his powers. Like, I believed his struggles with his powers more than I believed Luke Skywalker's struggles with his powers in The Last Jedi.
Oh, totally.
Like, I bought it. I bought, like, why he was conflicted and when he would be like, fine. And then he'd use his power and then he'd dive in. And then you saw just how powerful Danny was, at certain times that people were like, oh, I've never seen this before. Like, the things that he was capable of.
Right.
But it's just, you could see a lifetime of years, a good decade at least, of him just at the bottom of a whiskey bottle has really, like, fucked him up. So Ewan McGregor killed it.
Another thing, the actor who played Scatman Carruthers was great.
That's something I should say about this movie. Yeah. But.
No buts.
Oh.
It was just great. Like, I was like, wait. Did they do some deep fake shit?
Dude, the actors they picked to play the old parts. So, full reveal, there are scenes involving the characters from The Shining. Duvall's character, Shelley Duvall's character, Jack Nicholson's character makes an appearance, and the guy,
Scatman Carruthers.
Scatman Carruthers, who originally played the part in the movie, his current part. They found 3 actors who did such a ridiculously amazing job of playing those characters. Like, the guy who was playing Jack Torrance in his scene didn't seem like a Jack Nicholson. He wasn't doing a Jack Nicholson impression.
Right.
But he nailed Jack Torrance.
Yeah.
In his talking, the way Jack Nicholson talked as Jack Torrance. And then the woman who played his David's mother nailed I almost could have believed that it was like
Shelley Duvall.
Yeah, I mean, the way she talked, like, talk to me, Danny. Like, the way she said that, the way she worried, the way she panicked in the flashback scenes, I was like, oh my God, nailed it. And then he nailed it.
Well,
and they weren't pretending to be the actors or Scatman Carruthers.
Right.
They were pretending to be the characters.
Right. But, I mean, he looked like him. He talked like it. I mean, I was like...
What was that guy's name? Let me look for it. But
for a second, I was like, wait, what the fuck is going on in this movie? He's dead.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He is very dead.
And then I was like, oh, never mind. I get it. It's, it's his ghost or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, wait, is that him? Like, how did they... For a good few seconds, I was like, wait, how are they doing? Like, is this, like I said, some deep fake shit where they're just... It's all, computer animated film. I'm like, because that guy looks a lot like,
Yeah, Carl... here he is right here. Carl Lumbly. Right?
Yeah.
Dude, Dick Halloran. He was great. He like, there's even a scene, he's like, I loved it when Danny goes, Ewan McGregor as Danny goes, why me? And then Dick Halloran says to him, like, why you? Why anyone? Why me? You walked into my kitchen, we exchanged a couple words, I'm still on hook for you. Like, I'm dead, I'm still on hook for you. Like, I was like, that was an amazing delivered line.
Yes.
That was delivered. I could have believed that Scatman Carruthers delivered that line.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out I didn't even fucking catch this. So Alex Esso was Wendy Torrance. She's fantastic. She's Saudi Arabian. Man, she killed it. I couldn't believe how well she did that on that. Like, she just nailed Shelley Duvall as playing Wendy Torrance. But I just realized the guy who plays Jack Torrance in Doctor Sleep, who did such a good job, is fucking E.T. Kid himself. That is Henry Thomas. What? Yeah, that was Henry Thomas under all that makeup. Now, they don't show him a lot.
They show most of his profile.
Yeah, but they had really styled his profile to look like Jack Torrance. But holy shit. Yeah, he was in Haunting of the Hill House recently. Elliot, yeah, he's Elliot. In the 80s when he was a kid. He's a fantastic actor. And I can't believe how much he nailed it. He's been in a lot of stuff, actually. Cloak and Dagger.
Oh, yeah.
That was a great one.
Well, brings up another issue.
I'm firing this guy. Crazy.
With Jack Torrance. Or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Jack Torrance.
Yeah, he was supposed to, in the book, he gets redemption because he comes and he's part of the reason that he helps Danny at the end. And that's part of how to show that Jack finally gets peace. And they didn't give a shit about that at all. They did not care to show Jack Torrance coming back. But I almost wonder if it was because they thought like a little bit of Jack goes a long way.
Right.
I mean, they nailed that scene. Like the scene he's in, I was so impressed.
But they could have done something like while he's at the bar, going like, well, I'll see what I can do. Or, you know what I mean? And then leave. Like, they could have alluded to the fact that he was going to get...
Or he could have showed up at some point.
Something like that. But,
yeah, there's a lot of changes to this movie's ending to the book. And it changes the path of how everything goes. Which is why I'm surprised if they'd ended like the book, sequels would have made sense. To end like the movie did, sequels don't make sense.
At all.
So I'm not sure what they were expecting to do. And
Unless,
maybe I should be glad that they couldn't do it.
Yeah, unless they were having some sort of vision of the girl kind of...
I can only imagine
you know
that
what I
would
mean?
be the case. It would be the young girl. But...
she was a great actress. Good actor
yeah.
in it, but as far as a character, I wasn't really invested.
No, and she's older in
character.
this movie than she is in the book. But yeah, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
We've just celebrated a lot of the great parts of the movie, but I will agree on the negative side. I feel like it does not do the job that Shining did, showing anxiety or menace. There is, I think if I would agree that there was plenty of things with the True Knot as vampires, they're supposed to scare us, and they just didn't. Even in the books, it's more terrifying. When they suck steam, their eyes light up, their jaw unhinges, and this dark black hole appears as they siphon in. You see how not human they are. In this case, their eyes just glowed.
Yeah.
And it just didn't make them terrifying enough.
Yeah, it was just Burning Man. It was like, oh, these burners are killing these kids and sucking out their soul is the vibe I got. I'm like,
definitely had the feel of people just getting stoned. Like they were taking a hit, you know? It's like I see that. I totally see that.
I didn't have too many problems with this flick. But aside from what I just mentioned, and then it was a little more action movie at times.
Yeah.
Than I would prefer in a
without the sense of dread.
Supernatural. Yeah, it was like the ambush part.
Yeah, the ambush.
Is I'm like
it was very actiony.
I'm like, I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I guess, you know, I could see how something like that would happen, but
yeah,
it's not very scary as far as like a supernatural creepy scary. It's like,
yeah,
you know,
that's probably its main crime, is that it just did not deliver. It didn't deliver that. You know, it was not a movie that made you feel like, oh, this is getting scary. I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, there was no real time. I was uncomfortable watching them slaughter a child Spoiler alert, a child gets slaughtered. Awfully, by the way. But it's awful. And it's brutal because it's a child. But it's not... But that's it. Like, that made me uncomfortable. The rest of the movie, there was no sense of me being scared. And granted, I'm pretty used to horror movies at this point. But, yeah, there's no real menace. And I thought the woman who played Rose the Hat, I think she's a great villain. But I just didn't feel scared enough from them. But there are a couple interesting bits in this. There's, like, a scene where the hospital cat, AZ, jumps on the desk in front of Dan. He's reading the January 1978 issue of Playboy magazine, the same magazine that Jack Torrance read in the lobby of the Overlook while waiting for Stuart Ullman and Bill Watson on closing day in The Shining. Most of the elements from The Shining were recreated with duplicate sets that looked amazing and look like actors, but there were 4 shots from the movie that were reused. Can you guess which one they are?
I'm going to say the elevator blood.
Okay.
One of the maze scenes.
Okay.
Would be my second guess. Naked lady in the bathtub. One of those scenes.
Okay.
And what would be the 4th thing? I feel like one of the panning shots going from room to room in the Overlook Hotel.
Okay.
I can't remember which one it was, but I just remember like that looks familiar, like super familiar.
Right.
But
what it was, actually, was the aerial shot of the water and the island as you come into the Overlook. That shot where they come in and turn, that's straight up from Kubrick's film. The blood pouring from the elevator, congratulations, that is exactly the shot. And the 2 shots after it of a car driving on the mountain road. Those shots were degrained, recolored as day for night, and had snow digitally added. But those were filmed for Kubrick's movie.
and those are the ones they decided to use.
Yeah. I mean, I think the blood pouring, there's no recreating that scene.
Right,
Though,
that's good.
And I think that, honestly, it's really funny that we actually touch on this. Because if I had to say, and I'm not just saying because I found out that they were covered. If anything approaches dread, it's when they head to the Overlook.
Yeah.
And it turns out those weren't shots filmed by this guy.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah. But I mean, even Rose the Hat's reaction to the blood pour is unimpressed. And I think that's supposed to show us how powerful she is. But again, it just sort of undercuts it.
Yeah, it wasn't a very powerful moment.
Right.
As where I feel like it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Or,
yeah.
You know, it was just kind of like, oh, let's replay this. And she's going to look at it and be like, huh. Well, and the fact that she kind of was like, like smirked.
Right.
Kind of at it. And I'm like, but, yeah. And the other, when he goes down to the boiler room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does that place still have electricity?
I don't know.
Because he turned the lights on.
No, he didn't turn the lights on. As he walked in, the lights started lighting up as he walked in. Remember, they described him as a battery that powers that place. So as soon as he started walking in, he started waking up the hotel.
Right.
It was reacting to him. And then he actually officially turned on the power and the boiler. He turned on and he prepped the batteries. There were these batteries, and then he got the boiler running.
Right. But when he walked into the boiler room, well, all right, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. But I think if anything this movie suffers from is, I think the biggest crime is the lack of menace. It doesn't feel really scary. Like, I barely call this a horror film. I wouldn't. I think
Yeah.
it has horror elements.
It's like a thriller.
Thriller with
Supernatural
thriller with horror elements. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not really a horror film, but it is connected to an amazing horror film, and a fantastic horror story author.
Which would make sense to the point that I just made about how did he turn the light on? Because I didn't get the feeling that I remember them talking about him being a battery and all that. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I get that now, but as I was watching it,
You didn't get it.
I was like,
Yeah, you'd lost track of it.
well, when he walked in and it started lighting up,
Mm-hmm.
like I was like, oh, you know, I just didn't think about it
Yeah.
as that's what was happening. You know what I mean? And then when he went down into the boiler room, I'm like, oh, the fucking lights are on. Wait, how'd that happen? Because it's supposed to be, you know, fucking shut down and abandoned and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah. So they definitely need to do a better job
Well,
with that.
there's a couple little funny bits of just things I'll throw out there. The child who gets murdered that bothered me so much. Apparently, Jacob Tremblay is his name. And during the first take of his death scene, it was so intense that it surprised and scared the other actors, including Rebecca Ferguson, who plays Rose the Hat and was doing the killing. She was so horrified by what he was doing and how he was acting that she couldn't get her lines out. And when the scene was over, a grinning Timberlake jumped up, covered in fake blood, high-fived his father, walked over to the craft service to get a snack, and leaving the rest of the cast just shell-shocked and traumatized at this child who was just screaming in death and gurgling.
The crying was good. I liked the crying.
Over the kid?
Yeah. While they're doing it.
He was... It's the only part of this movie that made me actually horrified.
I did have one problem with it, though.
What?
His screams would have been way more high pitched.
Uh,
He kind of let out like a girthy, ah.
yeah.
I feel like as a child
Yeah.
that was getting mutilated, like, or just for effect, would have been great if it was like a high pitched, like, ah, like
Right.
blood curdling, high pitched child scream. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, that could have been way more uncomfortable. Because that's, you know, it's like a baby fucking deer. They're just
Right.
like, ah! You're like, oh my god, it's the worst sound ever.
I honestly, at that point, I was just watching this little child get murdered, and I was having a real hard time with it. So I think I would have been like these actors and just been freaked out by how well he was dying. But I agree with you. Like, kids, even young boys that are like 10, will scream high-pitched screams when they scream.
When they
It's
get
like-
hurt or something,
Yeah,
you know.
because they're not...
Well, they didn't hit puberty, and
They haven't hit
they're still
puberty, and
a
there's
kid.
that shrill child scream that doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl, you still have. So, yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I really think I really enjoyed the movie for the most part. I just didn't really feel the horror, and that's really it. That's the main concern that I have with it. But I don't know. Otherwise, I thought it was really great overall, and yeah, man, I don't know. I think it was a good movie.
Yeah.
Overall, I enjoyed it, but I didn't have many problems as I thought. I mean, I think its pros outweighs its cons. I just wouldn't call it a horror movie.
Yeah, it definitely not a horror movie, but it was good, entertaining.
Yeah. And there's a lot of references. If you're a Stephen King fan, like, there's a bunch of references to the Tet Corporation, to 19, a lot of Dark Tower callbacks. Really cool that they keep that in the movie. In the threads of the movies he runs, like that you would see in the It movies and that you've seen in other movies from him. A lot of Dark Tower is a series of books that Stephen King wrote that weaves threads between all of his stories and connects them all into one whole universe. And the Stephen King universe is fascinating, totally batshit crazy and scary. And movies do a very watered down version of it, but still do a good. This movie had a lot of cool references to all that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely
The number 19, all these things are important.
definitely paid homage to The Shining. You know, I think it did a real good job with that and everything. But yeah, it just wasn't.
It was a Shining Stranger Things.
Yeah,
It kind of was, where it was a very good tribute. And if anything, it kind of suffers from being a tribute.
Yeah,
You know,
which you know, I mean, The Shining, whether it's the book or the movie, set a pretty high bar on giving you that sense of anxiety and being uncomfortable,
yeah,
which would probably be almost impossible to recreate.
right.
So but I just feel like with this one, they just didn't even really try.
Yeah, no, they didn't try to recreate any of that. Well, okay. There it is. It was definitely a different kind of movie than The Shining.
Yes.
So, there it is. How many cute little zombie candy corns do we give this movie?
Give it a 3, solid 3.
Solid 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think solid 3 for me too. If I was to rate it as a supernatural thriller, I'd probably get a 4. But since this is a horror podcast, we're talking horror movies, it's going to lose 1. 4 because it's a solid movie and how it weaves everything together, and it's very well acted, great performances. But so if you want it just as a movie, I guess it's a 4. But I have to pull a candy corn away because it didn't really get that atmosphere that requires it to be the horror movie that it was promised.
And that it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it should have been. But I mean, I'll give it a 3, but still tell you all to check it out if you're a fan of The Shining. I think it's a great postscript. Like, if you've ever wondered what happens to Danny and Wendy Torrance at the end of that movie, this is a great movie to watch to find out where Danny went after and what kind of, it does expand upon the world a little bit, but it's not scary. Not really scary. A little discomforting at sometimes, but no menace, no dread. Cool characters. I don't know why you all stayed away from it. Obviously, you have your reasons, but you should check it out.
Since I did not read the book, what was the significance of the creepy dead old lady in the bathtub lady from the first one, being in the bathroom with Danny later, and then the girl at the end?
Okay, so postscript on this episode. All right, so basically these characters they're psychics, and they all have certain kind of powers. Danny and this girl Abra are very powerful.
Right, I figured it had something to do with like just residual
so
stuff, but
they shine brightly, a little bit more brightly than most. And in this universe, not only do the vampires feed on these psychics to survive, but ghosts, the spirits, do too.
right.
And the spirits of the Overlook are hungry spirits that feed off of when Danny, Dick Halloran worked there and he was generally pretty fine working there, but he said, he goes, I don't shine like you do, Danny. You're a bright light. So Danny walked into that hotel with his drunk, his struggling alcoholic father and timid mother, and woke that hotel up because he was just so powerful, so bright, his energy, everybody wanted to feed off of it. Dick Halloran was able to work there while knowing that the place was haunted as hell, but didn't draw nearly as much as Danny did. After Danny left the hotel, the spirits kind of followed and found him,
Right.
and would be attracted to them because they could sense him and not let go. So they were showing that they were coming after him. But Dick Halloran teaches him to create a box in his mind where he can suck those spirits in, and with his own psychic weight of the mind that he has, keep them locked in his brain.
Which is why in that one scene when his niece, when Rose the Hat gets into her head and she starts going into all those file cabinets.
Yeah, that's her memories.
Right. She shuts it on there.
She's
Right.
kind of doing an untrained version of that,
Right.
of trying to keep Rosie the Hat in her brain, and just didn't have enough of a hold on her,
Right.
and didn't know how to seal them up. Nobody had shown her how to do it. At one point it shows Danny was trying to do that to Rosie the Hat, and would have probably gotten away with it. If it didn't, the couple things went wrong. But Rosie was pretty powerful by at that moment.
Right.
But
Because he also said to his niece, like, don't ever open those things. Like, just
yeah,
don't
when
ever
he
do it.
went,
And
when he
she's
went
like,
in
"Okay,
his
sorry."
head by accident, he freaked out. He's like, "Don't go in there. You're not supposed to go in there.
Right.
Don't do that, and don't mess with those things, please." And she was like, "Okay." And then when he's fighting Rosie the Hat, Rosie leans down to him and goes, "You're not alone in there. Like, you're not the only one in there. What
Right.
else is there?"
And he
Because
lets
she
them
feeds off on that
Right.
steam. So she's here feeling the energy of all these creatures, and he's like, "Yeah, they're they're starving." And he opens all the boxes at once, and they go right for her
Right.
because she's also a psychic.
Right.
So, and then they go after him. When he dies, there's nothing to hold them back. So they start looking for the next brightest.
Right.
Which, by that point, Abba was far brighter than Danny because he had, held it back so long.
Yeah.
So that's what that was. And then you were seeing her at this point now knowing how to handle it.
Right. Like he did when he was young.
Yeah, and she just, shuts it down.
Right.
So there you go, guys. Dr. Sleep. I think even with the discussion, if you haven't seen the movie, we haven't spoiled enough of it. It's still worth watching. Check it out. It's a good movie.
If anything, these spoilers will make it make more sense.
Yeah, maybe it'll be more interesting. Like, maybe listen to some of this episode and then come back and listen to the rest of it after you watch it. Maybe something. I don't know. Yeah, I think this movie shouldn't have flopped. I don't think it was worth flopping. I think it should have. I'm surprised it flopped. But, I mean, we'll see. Maybe it'll pick it up by word of mouth. It's rare, but it does happen.
I feel like only the people that knew either about the novel or knew that this was supposed to be a sequel to The Shining,
Yeah.
like horror fans, were the only ones that really had a pulse on Dr. Sleep's coming out.
Yeah,
went to
but if
see it.
you went in there completely expecting horror, you'd be disappointed.
Right. But
And that may keep it from getting the buzz.
yeah, possibly.
Well, thank you very much for listening to Monster Candy Podcast. It's been
Crossing the Streams edition.
Crossing the Streams. Shit.
Dominic and Screamin E cross the streams.
For you. So this is what happens when you're not here, Shotzi. I know you're listening. All right. Have a good one, you guys. And remember, shine on, you crazy diamonds. You like that? That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous.
Quite poetic.
Yeah. Red rum. Danny's not here, Mrs. Torrance. Peace. Eat a banana. You've been listening to Monster Candy Podcast. Want to find out more about the show? Find us on the web at monstercandypodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching Monster Candy Podcast. And you can find our Twitter at MonsterCNDYPC. Hey, we couldn't fit the whole name. What do you want from us? Let us know what you think of the show and if we're right or if we're wrong or what you want us to tackle next. We want to hear from you. Well, Shotzi and I do, but I can promise that E doesn't really care. To find out more about Shotzi Blackheart and her professional wrestling, follow her Twitter at Shotzi Black or her Instagram at Shotzi Blackheart. You can follow Screamin E's band, the Memphis Murder Men, on Facebook at TMMM official page or his Instagram at Screamin E. That's screaming with no G, add the E. For me, Dominic Davy, you can find my artwork at dominicdavy.com, my band Tsunami Bomb at tsunamibomb.net, and you can hear my other podcast, 3 Gigs, at 3gigspodcast.com or on the same platform you're hearing this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Monster Candy Podcast.